All right, let's move to defense. And like I said, we'll try and go a little quicker here because we actually have a lot of basketball stuff to talk about too. But I'm going to blow your guys' mind. Hype train, defense, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant. Can you believe it?
Wow.
Look, some of these guys are obvious, and it's probably dumb to even put them on here. But when it feels like it's even above what you expected, right? Mason and Kenneth, who everybody was freaking out, transfer portal, blah, blah, blah. They both have made their comments on that and why they stayed and the brotherhood and blah, blah, blah. Not going to get into that. They're just absolute beasts. They're absolute beasts. And Wink will tell you, a guy who's been in the NFL for a long time, those are NFL defensive linemen that he's got starting at defensive tackle.
Yep.
I'm guessing it was Pro Football Focus, but I don't even remember who put it out. It might have been them using a graphic from an analyst. I should look it up to be accurate. But either way, I saw something that said Mason Graham would be the first defensive tackle chosen in this draft. In 2024, if he was in it, and Grant was like 6th or 7th. So we talk about all the time having a player that's NFL caliber, NFL ready, or like literally already NFL talent. Michigan had a lot of that last year with guys like Keegan and Zinter coming back. Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant are already dudes that could be in the NFL, and they're here as juniors. They're probably not going to be here as seniors, so enjoy the year you have with them. But throughout camp, they're just blowing people away. You've got a new staff coming in too, so these are guys that have kind of watched them from afar.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Jean-Marie has made some comments on him. Obviously, we're going to hear more from Esposito now that he's been added to the staff. Wink, like I mentioned, I didn't want to separate them. These two guys are just blowing people away with, look, they won a national championship and they're coming in, they're hungry for more. And they're looking the part early in camp.
Yeah. And, I'm going to take it one step further and I'm going to just double up and include Etta into that conversation too, because they're all,
that'll help us with time. Let's do that.
Yeah. They're all, I mean, that's just how good that defensive line is that we can kind of just take a step back and telling you how good Graham and Grant are because but guys like, Etta are stepping up. Cam Brandt has been shouted out multiple times. Obviously you got Josiah Stewart and Derek Moore in there as well. So, again, I just don't see any kind of drop off from the defensive line when you talk about your frontline core starters. Obviously they have to build depth. And, Etta is definitely someone that's gotten some pretty big hype during spring that they're hoping comes along. If you can get that core group of guys, Brandt, Etta, and TJ Guy involved and can get production out of that group, you'll be fine. I mean, then you got Trey Pierce at the at the tackles position. There's pieces there, and
healthy Rayshon Benny.
Yeah, and Benny, yes, and Benny should be back by fall. I mean, I obviously his injury was enough to get him out in the spring, but yeah. I mean, he'll be back by the fall too. And it'll take some time for him to kind of get back into the swing of things. I mean, it's not going to be just a plug and play type of situation. I mean, it's going to take a little bit of time. So that's kind of, I don't want to say good because obviously you want him at 100%, but it's good for other guys like a Trey Pierce to come in and get a little bit more time that he may not have if Benny was full go.
Yeah.
So I think it'll work out in the long run. And yeah, I often forget to mention Benny just because he's injured and it's just, there's going to be lag time to get him back into the fold. But I mean, I would be very surprised if he wasn't at least very, very close to full go when fall camp starts, in August or whenever it is. So that's a good thing. And I want to take it one step further here and talk about Esposito's hire too. I think that it's been really good so far. I mean, we're talking about maybe 3 or 4 practice, probably 4. Today's probably like the 4th practice they've had with him. But from what I've heard and taken away is that he's really impressive. He's shown a lot of fire. a lot of enthusiasm.
So you've heard about his energy, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of, that's what you need. This is a position where you bust people's asses. So you want a guy that kind of riles you up and gets you into that mode. And I think, Esposito not only is a good developer of talent, I mean, it's proof is right there. I mean, you don't have to look very far. Can recognize talent as well. So I think that's another great underrated addition that I, really wasn't expecting when Scruggs left the program. So, yeah, I just think Michigan has a really strong defensive staff, and I have no issues about the development of, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. I think this will be a really good coaching job by Esposito if he can get the most out of guys like Etta, Brandt, TJ Guy, Benny. There's so many names you could list off there that could see some time. So yeah, all good things on the defensive line so far. I mean both lines you could say that, I mean you're going up against the best, in both directions. So two very good offensive lines are going, or the two very good lines are going up against each other in the offense and defense. So how could you not improve? Is kind of my point there. But yeah, I mean, it should be a shock to everyone. Not really. The defensive line is good and it's going to be good this year. And I'd even go as far as saying it's going to be elite this year.
I think it's the best in college football.
No, yeah, I think so too.
When you talk about Graham and Grant on the inside, who are gap fillers, run stuffers, I don't remember Grant's exact number, but I know Mason, his point of contact on tackles was less than a yard last year.
That's crazy.
It's absurd.
That's a brick wall.
And you're talking about guys that can pass rush too. Grant had the only sack on Michael Penix in the national championship game. I think Mason had 4 or 5 sacks. I don't remember off the top of my head, but those are guys that can make sacks for you. Derek Moore and Stewart, this is similar to everybody kind of has a guy. Those are both double-digit sack potential guys, in my opinion, that I just absolutely think can take a huge leap. And then, I mean, Esposito is also a backup D coordinator on the staff. That's what's so impressive about this staff.
Yeah, there's multiple guys.
Lamar Morgan was literally just a defensive coordinator. Jean-Marie has called plays, was like in a co-DC type role, could be on that arch, right? It's crazy. It really is. And then, shout out in between the Scruggs dismissal and then the hire here. The analysts don't get enough credit, but LaTroy Lewis helping out on the interior and Wilkins helping out the edge outside linebacker role. Those are going to be huge factors in the coaching as well. And then Etta, yeah.
Pernell McPhee into that group too.
Yeah, it's just wild, dude. Yeah. But yeah, Etta was the next name he put on there. I think he is. I mean, I think it was a month ago. I get on the hype train for him now because of the things I was hearing about him. He's an interesting piece because we wondered if he'd move inside or play out, and he's doing both, and that just screams do Chris Jenkins things at times and do Mike Morris things at times. Mm-hmm. Right? That's going to be his role. He's a guy that can be a part of the strong side rotation with Derek Moore. He's a guy that can slide in and stand up and play 5 tech. He can get 3 tech. We know Wink loves putting 7 dudes on the line, and you don't know who's rushing, who's dropping back. And you've got edge guys lining up in the middle and all over the place. So somebody like Etta with his size and speed and athletic ability that can line up all over the place, I think he's going to be an absolute stud. And he's been brought up multiple times by current players as well as players that have left as a dude they think that can make a big step this year. I'd argue the conductor of the Michigan football hype train, the leader, whatever you want to call it, is Jon Baram at this point. I don't know if a dude has been hyped up more than the Maryland transfer has.
Yeah.
Look, we know he can play ball. He's played 2 years as a starter at Maryland, and he was really good. But how many times in the last couple of years in the Michigan transfer portal have we seen somebody just by plugging them into a really good defense, now surrounded with other elite players, they're just able to take another leap, right? Baram is one of those dudes that is just physically impressive. You just look at him and it's like, well, the dude looks like a football player, right?
Yeah.
His speed is showing on the field, his physicality is showing on the field. And I just, even this is not the same thing because I think he's going to be even better. But all the talk of Josh Wallace last year when he got added late, it was like, yeah, he was really good at UMass and blah, 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 blah. What happens when you take a guy like that and put him on a team where now he has Will Johnson and Mike Sainer still and these other guys with him, it rises the tide, right? So Baram, no shot at Maryland, okay? But now that he's going to be playing behind Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Derek Moore, Josiah Stewart, all these guys we just mentioned with Ernest Hausman next to him and Will Johnson as a corner, he gets to be better, right? He's free to do what makes him great. And I can't talk to anybody without Jon Baram's name coming up, whether I ask or they bring it up on their own.
Oh yeah. From day one, Jon Baram's name has been brought up. And someone told me this weekend that he could play for the Lions right now. And again, I'm not buying into that. I mean, that's just pure
maybe the old Lions, but
yeah, I mean, that's just pure Kool-Aid chugging. I mean, I'm not gonna buy into that. But I mean, that's pretty impressive praise for a guy. Ultimately, we'll see how that translates to the field. But you're talking about a group of Ernest Hausman and Jon Baram there. I mean, that's two pretty good linebacker core right there. And I was also told that you probably won't see much drop off between Baram and Colson, Junior Colson. So, which maybe I'm not even going to get into that too, because
I was going to say when I asked that question and the answer involved Devin Bush, I was like, okay, don't do this to me.
Yeah.
Because I will eat the hype. I'm not like you, Josh. I love the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
But this is what they're talking about. Look, Colson played with clubs, dude. I don't think people talk enough about how good Junior Colson was. Leading tackler. I think the first year as a freshman, he was like fourth, but he's been the leading tackler the last 2 years, obviously. Dude never came off the field.
Yeah.
He could get out of position at times. Definitely improved the last 2 years, especially in coverage. But I think there's going to be things Baram's better at.
I agree. I agree with that.
There's going to be things that maybe it's tough to replace with Colson, but people have brought it up. I think as a pass rusher, Baram probably brings an extra element, which that's more about replacing Michael Barrett.
Right. And the thing is too, is that there's actually film on Baram. This isn't just like some random dude in camp that's showing off. I mean, there's like a record there. I mean, Maryland has done a good job at scouting and bringing in talent, but they've just had losses. Like their top tier talent has gone elsewhere. That's just the type of thing. They're almost like a feeder program for their best players to go elsewhere. I forgot the stat, when Baram entered the portal, but I think like the last 3 years, their number one rated player on the team is gone, transferred away from that program.
People forget Chop Robinson started.
Yes, that was the one. That was included. It was included in that stat. Yeah, Chop Robinson left Maryland, and now Baram left. And Michigan's fortunate enough to get him, and I think not many people are talking enough about what Baram could be in this defensive system. So,
and he's from St. Francis. So for those of you who don't know, that was Biff's school. So that is Blake Corum's former school. It also makes Baram, that is a junior, a former teammate of other Michigan junior, Derek Moore.
Yep. So again, there's actually something credible that we can see that kind of backs up the talk, which is nice. So it's not just people blowing smoke up our asses to hype up a guy. I mean, there's actually like legitimate stuff out there. So he's a guy that a lot of people should be excited about seeing play. Yeah.
So excited. I'm going to answer this or bring it up. It's not something I have in our hype train, but who plays nickel? I think it's fair to say, Jaden McBurrow's backed up last year a lot. He's been getting a lot of the reps there. Some good things have been said about him. Cody Jones has kind of been in that rotation.
Yep.
I think a name we've been hearing a lot that we're going to hear in a different context once Quentin Johnson does join the team He's going to be a late enroll because of how late he ended up coming back to the program, so he hasn't been there.
Yep.
I think Zeke Berry is probably going to be named as a guy in that safety nickel hybrid, but those are probably the three names: McBurrows, Cody Jones getting some reps, Zeke Berry, excuse me. And then, well, maybe I could tie this into the next piece, which the other corner spot, we have another CB2 battle this year. DJ Waller was a guy as a freshman who kind of rose and contributed a lot more than people expected. Jair Hill had an early fast start and then ended up redshirting and playing back. Those two guys are competing a ton. I've heard either one of those could find a role. I think they're going to rotate that slot spot a lot is kind of what I'm getting at. But yeah, DJ Waller, to me, and maybe this isn't, I don't know if this is a fair way to put this, but when they moved Marion Walker over to defense and thought about what a guy with that kind of height but flexibility alongside Will Johnson would be like, DJ Waller is basically what they hoped Walker would grow into. He's big, man. And that's old school hardball corner, the Richard Shermans, the tall, physical outside corner.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it'll be very difficult for the coaches to keep DJ Waller off the field. I think he's going to be the guy at CB2. And I think he's going to play very well at that spot. And the good thing again about this position is that they have other guys that they can trot out there for depth purposes. But
I didn't realize Keyshawn Harris was back.
Yeah, and he's played a little bit as well. So
just good, reliable dude.
Yeah, I just think you can either I would be very surprised if Jaden McBurrows is not your starting nickel. And then you do a combination of him and Hill probably at a nickel, and then maybe a Hill and Waller at the other CB2 spot. But I mean, a combination of Will Johnson, McBurrows, and Waller are three pretty good guys, two up and coming guys that can have the potential to play at a high level. And then, you've got one of the best corners in college football in Will Johnson, who
can line up a nickel too.
Yeah. Who basically takes half the field away, half the side of the field away. So,
God, true.
I mean, that's kind of the bad, the good and the bad. I mean, the good is that you don't really have to worry about a guy, like Johnson giving up a big play, but it also kind of gives guys like Waller, McBurrows another opportunity to see passes thrown their way, because they'll probably pick on those guys because they don't want to throw it at Johnson. So you got to take the good and the bad, and that's a quick way to get development too, is when you have a really good corner on the other side who doesn't get much action because he's that good. So there's a lot to be excited about that defensive back group. I mean, you're missing. I mean, no one's going to be able to replace Mikey Sainer still. I mean, it's just impossible. But you've got guys who can play at a high level, and I think that's what you need. You don't need a Mikey Sainer still every year. He's one of one. You cannot replicate him. Just like you can't replicate a Will Johnson. You won't be able to replicate him, but you can get someone that can be good, that plays good football. So again, a lot to like there. DJ Waller's definitely leading the hype train in the defensive back group for sure. And that's not just from what people we speak to. I mean, a lot of defensive guys have mentioned him publicly too. So there's definitely, something to that talk.
That is a physical secondary. I mean, when you talk, Will's a guy that can lay hits. Waller, McBurrows is a linebacker trapped in a corner's body. I mean, he's been hurt twice because of him leveling hits, and we don't even get into the safeties. Makari Page is a big dude. Yep. I think Brandon Hillman gets a huge opportunity to have a Keon Sabb like sophomore year. Zeke Berry's a physical dude. We saw Quentin Johnson lay out Igbuka, so it's a good group, and I'm not shocked to see Waller getting that attention early. And I'm with you. I think him and Hill are both too good to not play. So I like the idea of maybe Hill getting some run at nickel. I think that's pretty good.